There's something so fascinating about an iceberg. It's enormous, it has a bunch of nonsense written on it, you guys like to watch it, and most importantly, it gives me free views. So I decided to—
What the fuck are you doing on my computer? This isn't your turn yet. Go into the shame corner and wait till it's your turn. Sorry about that, guys. I got a bunch of Minecraft theories today that I want to look at, and I also got my friend Dekunat5 here, who— I don't know why he's here. Let's just get into this. Dead Star. Though there have been many post-apocalyptic theories in the past, this theory states that the Minecraft world doesn't actually take place on Earth, but it takes place far into the future, where the sun has reached its entropic death. Humans decided to create their own artificial sun by turning the Earth into a heat source, while civilization migrated over to the cold remains of the dead sun to start anew. This artificial planet could explain why the Minecraft world is still abundantly ripe with resources, and why there's only a few feet of soil above a layer of rock. That also explains the weird path of celestial bodies in the night sky, with the moon and the sun always in a circular path, perfectly opposite of one another, and the stars all orbiting the Earth, the same pace. These can be explained if the Minecraft world was orbiting an actual sun, but it would make much more sense if you were on the real sun, and the moon and sun seen in the game were simply other planets. Yeah.
The wither skeleton is imperfect. The current wither is formed with only a few blocks of soul sand and 3 wither skeleton skulls. That really doesn't seem like much to summon what is apparently an incredible powerful entity, not to mention the fact that the wither is just a floating torso without any limbs. Steve probably doesn't know the proper way to summon the perfect wither, and is instead going off what the wither painting depicts. Even though this isn't canon, but in Minecraft Story Mode Season 1, the antagonist was the Wither Storm, a much stronger version of the wizard summoned with a command block in the middle of the soul sands. This is hinting towards them being air-breathing entities with some form of water-breathing and effect provided via conduit power.
Steve is an amnesiac, a theory based off the assumption that crafting recipes and advancements are canon information and are actually the thoughts of Steve himself. At some point during whatever apocalyptic event caused almost all of mankind to be wiped off the face of the planet, Steve developed amnesia, and over the course of the game, specific events caused him to jog his memory and remember more of the survival skills he used to have. One notable instance is how simply going into water unlocks a crafting recipe for boats, even if the player hasn't collected any wood. Ghasts are soul amalgamations, with ghasts being ghost-like mobs. One could wonder which mob once existed that could be big enough to become ghast upon death, yet no longer exists in a living form today. One theory proposes that ghasts aren't actually based on a singular mob, but are simply the runoff of souls produced once soul sand blocks become too saturated. This explains why ghasts have a higher spawn rate in soul sand valleys, where soul sand and soul soil are far more prominent. It also somewhat explains the depressed nature of ghasts, as well as clarifying the description of the Uneasy Alliance advancement, since they do not actually belong in the Nether in the first place, Emerald Sigmas. This is a theory that states that the Illagers and Pillagers came about by them becoming so greedy for emeralds that they'd rather kill one another, twisting the mind and soul in the process.
But the theory hides a darker secret. Before Illagers and Pillagers were implemented in Minecraft, you have to think that it started all with one villager. One villager who was greedy enough that he inflated his own prices so he can get more emeralds. The problem with that is that it started a chain reaction. A chain reaction that resulted in the birth of the Pillager and Illagers. What? You don't believe me? Then look up Minecraft villager inflation.
Ancient debris came from a reactor explosion. A theory stating that instead of debris being ancient trees, the debris is actually the metal scraps from the aftermath of a huge reactor explosion that subsequently gave birth to the Nether dimension. Much like the Nether reactor core from the early Pocket Edition days, but on a much larger scale.
Beacons release souls. Beacons require a nether star to be crafted, found within the core of the wither. A hideous fusion of soul sand and once undead wither skulls. Nether stars on their own are a strange thing to be dropped by the boss, although it makes more sense if one were to assume that these stars are simply the concentrated essence of all the souls that made up the wither previously. By creating the proper structure, one could break apart the star and release the souls within, sending them upwards towards the afterlife, as one large column of lights. Beacon effects are a final thank you to those you saved. A blessing in exchange for an extraordinarily good deed. Steve is in a coma. A few parts of Minecraft could point to Steve actually being in a coma over the course of the game and having to face his past. Most of the undead mobs in the game share Steve's face, for instance. He also doesn't dream when he goes to sleep, probably because he's already in one himself. The strongest piece of evidence, however, is the end poem, besides comparing life as a long dream versus the short dream of the game. The last line of the end credits instructs the player to wake up. The dimensions in Minecraft could also represent different stages of subconsciousness. The overworld is a surface level subconscious, where imagination thrives and memories are kept in order. It represents the present. The nether, on the other hand, represents the traumas and regrets of our past. It symbolizes the chaotic part of our subconscious, housing our fears, instincts, motives, and urges. The last dimension, the end, is the most naive and unknowing part of our mind. It represents the future. Challenging and slaying the Ender Dragon, the final conflict, is what allows Steve to accept his past and move on. The dragon drops an egg, a symbol of creation and rebirth, of getting another chance at life. Dude, this theory is so bullshit, I fucking hate you.